It feels like every single day we're getting an injury report that says somebody's out and they're going to miss a handful of games. Depth has never been more important in today's NBA, and it made things really fascinating when I was looking around for potential filler spots for some of these teams that have watched certain guys get injured, like the Los Angeles Lakers with DeAndre Ayton, who recently ended up picking up Drew Timme from the G League, and other players across the league that have had to really fill in with a lack of depth across some of these NBA rosters. With that being the case, Bleacher Report actually recently dropped a free agency big board listing their top 20 players on the free agency market who you might end up seeing get picked up by your favorite team. Even if it's on a two-way, it could be an Exhibit 10, but these are guys that I think are going to end up legitimately getting real time on the floor for somebody this season. Bleacher Report gives a pretty decent list of 20, and this will be my first time reading through it. But rather than going through every single guy, we're going to point out the guys who we think might be the most impactful and are the most likely to actually end up being signed to a roster. So let's take a look at it real quick. So ranking the top NBA free agents available right now, says although the 2025-26 NBA season is underway, several quality free agents are still looking for a home. Opportunities can be limited initially as teams look to find their footing in the playoffs/lottery chases. Injuries, trades, and the loosening of financial restrictions will lead to job opportunities. That's mainly referring to the January 15th date, which will open up things significantly for players to get traded. You can do salary dumps that way, and it opens up more player movement because now the eligibility allows more guys to be on the open market, or allows more guys to be on the trade market, I guess, such as Kobe Buffkin signing a 10-day contract with the Memphis Grizzlies. With the G League in season, several quality prospects will get called up as reinforcements. Other teams looking for injury replacements and experience may prefer some of the veteran names who are staying in shape independently instead of playing in the G League. The following is a list of the top available free agents who may find roster spots before the end of the regular season. So, off rip, before we even get into the article further, that means that certain guys in the G League will not be included in this list because it's focusing primarily on guys who are genuinely true free agents. So someone that I would probably have liked to see on a list like this one is Victor Oladipo, who I believe is on the Wisconsin Herd, the G League team associated with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think he would be a really good get for somebody, but he may not be somebody listed on this particular ranking because it's focused strictly on true free agents. So let's go ahead and get into it a little bit. Mo Bamba, not super crazy about Mo Bamba as far as I'm concerned. It plays with the Utah Jazz G League affiliate team, but I mean the only upside that Mo Bamba has truly brought is that the best version of himself. He gave 3-point floor spacing, something that he wasn't really associated with back when he was drafted at Texas. There was always this potential upside that he could be a 3-point shooter, but they've said that about so many Texas centers. There was a point when draft evaluators thought that Jared Allen had the touch to potentially space the floor. Miles Turner is somebody who's been associated a lot with being a floor spacer, despite the fact that he doesn't shoot the three ball nearly as efficient as you would think for somebody that's deemed as a floor spacing five. Mo Bamba's kind of in that same category, and even back then, his lack of rim protection consistently was one of the things that made it so hard to keep him playable. Torrey Craig, he played for the Bulls. Can't say that he's somebody I think would be able to really contribute, but I guess as a defensive-oriented player, could be kind of interesting. Jalon Wright, okay. Comparing him to, while he's not known to be a great shooter, 34.8% from three over his career, or a floor general like Chris Paul, he has proven to be a strong point of attack defender. Okay, another point of attack defender type, Alec Burks. That's more of your ball handling, 3-point shooter type. Cody Martin. Campaign's going to be a guy that I feel like always is going to find a way onto a roster. It may not be the team you necessarily expect, but he always finds a way to get like 10 to 15 minutes a night on somebody's team. I really wouldn't be surprised that it says he joined the Indiana Pacers training camp recently, but wasn't expected to crack the team's top 15. I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up soaking up some real point guard minutes for somebody, because Campaign's just steady. He's always been a steady point guard, and he's always been somebody that when given the opportunity, he has been able to shine in spurts. The issue is just that the upside for him as an overall offensive player is not so high, and defensively he leaves a lot to be desired. Jaden Springer, let's be honest, that has more to do with has a lot more to do with his youth because he's 23 years old. Other than that, not somebody that's known to be a knockdown 3-point shooter and has more of an upside for his physical tools and athleticism that kind of like tends to lean him towards being deemed as a defensive oriented point guard slash shooting guard. Um, I don't know, nothing crazy. Dennis Smith Jr. excuse me. Last time we saw Dennis Smith Jr. with the Charlotte Hornets was probably the most productive that we've seen Dennis Smith Jr. In the NBA. I would make the argument that like outside of his rookie year, which was still relatively rough, I think that if we're being honest here, Dennis Smith reinvented himself really well in Charlotte as more of a defender. He was somebody who would like hound you 94 feet. Dennis Schroeder, I keep saying Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Smith Jr. because it all sounds real similar, but Dennis Smith Jr. is somebody that I think was kind of starting to carve out like a Davion Mitchell type of role for himself in Charlotte. And it sucks that the Dallas Mavericks just didn't have enough space for him when they invited him to training camp, because I honestly feel like he could be a really interesting fit on that team specifically, because let's be honest, their biggest struggle is the point guard position. No Kyrie Irving. Of course, the only real true point guard you can rely on right now is D'Angelo Russell. There's Williams too. I don't want to discount him because he's actually been really good for them as well. But I think he still could be a really decent fit. Monte Morris, I believe that he was. Oh yeah, he had a short stint with the Indiana Pacers. I mean, knockdown 3-point shooter kind of is in your Tyus Jones mold of like, point guard as a facilitator, but he's somebody that thrives a little bit more in terms of playing up tempo like pacing. That's why honestly Indiana would have been a really good fit for him long term beyond the 10-day contract. Because if we're being honest, like he just gives you a different play style with that second unit that could really help like juice your offense. Tyler Smith, I'm assuming that's another like youthful, athletic upside type of deal. David Roddy, loved David Roddy coming out of college. Very nice touch as a shooter. Somebody that I think in the mid-range area is like very solid. As a scorer, not somebody that you can expect to really space the floor very well. It mentions in the article that he's shot 30.2% from beyond the arc in his NBA career. But I think that he provides a lot of like really interesting stuff on the offensive end. As at 255 pounds, like he can be a really good screener for you. Again, a pick and pop guy who I think at least in the mid-range area could still be very dangerous. And I think it's interesting that they compare him to Josh Hart in this article. I wouldn't say that he's Josh Hart in terms of the intangibles. I think that's what really separates Josh Hart from a lot of these quote unquote rebounding guard types, these big wing style guards that their main goal is really just to defend and rebound at a high level. I don't think he plays with the same level of like oomph that Josh Hart does, but I could see why the physical build could present situations where he could be that style of player for somebody. But he was always score first in college, and you just wonder whether or not the lack of real defensive upside might hurt him, paired with the fact that he can't space the floor. Seth Curry, this one hurts. I'm not gonna lie, this one hurts because I honestly thought that him being on the Golden State Warriors would have been so dope. It does, according to the report, it says Curry is expected to re-sign with the Golden State Warriors. I really hope to see that because I think that would just be really dope of an experience. They've obviously played with each other back in the day, very, very long ago, earlier in their tenures in the NBA. But with them both being, 37 to 38 plus percent 3-point shooters, especially off the catch, the kind of creation that you could get for these two guys as 3-point shooters could be really important for this Golden State Warriors team as they try to make a real playoff push. And I'm going to be honest with you, like, I don't know if it would be out the gate, but I mean, he has to at least have an upside that's a little bit better than Buddy Hield is right now. Like, Buddy Hield has completely fallen from grace and then some compared to last season. And then production from the guard position outside of Steph Curry gets even worse because honestly, Brandon Podziemski hasn't been that great this season either. So I think getting somebody like Seth back in the mix, the synergy that he could have with somebody like a Draymond Green, obviously with Steph himself and then being like this catch and shoot 3-point opportunist. I think there's just a lot that they could really exploit by bringing him in. So I really hope to see him actually stick on this team. Again, it says they look to re-sign him or expect to re-sign him. I would be really, really like to see that. Just like as a fan, I would really enjoy that a ton. Dylan Jones. I mean, okay, probably a lot of this is weighted towards how effective he's been in the G League, but can't speak too much to it. Ty Washington. Again, I feel like that has more to do with name value and what he's been able to do in the G League. I know once upon a time he used to kill it with the Houston Rockets, the Vipers G League team. Used to go absolutely insane on that team as well. But, I mean, I don't know, talent-wise. Again, this is another one of those, like, youth aspects of him being 24 years old. Delano Banton, I think, definitely should be on a roster somewhere. What he brings is, like, a jumbo wing ball handler. I think could be really, really helpful for a team. I think the biggest thing that hurts him, very similar to the Roddy thing, is like the size is there. I think the intangibles as a defender are definitely there, but the lack of 3-point shooting is so bad, like 30.4% from beyond the arc. That really hurts you when you're a defensive-only guy that doesn't have insane chops as an on-ball player. Again, he's at 6'8" with a positive wingspan, if I'm not mistaken. And the length that he has provides the ability to guard multiple positions. I think I saw it a ton with the Portland Trailblazers, and you also saw it in spurts when he played with the Boston Celtics, where he's able to guard 1 through 3. Now, once you get beyond that, it does get a little tougher in terms of him dealing with physicality, but I think in terms of his lateral quickness, like he can guard in space very well. The issue is he gives off Andre Roberson vibes with a little bit more ball handling ability. Like he's somebody that legitimately is a net negative on the offensive end if you're caught in the half court setting. Now, if you're in transition, if you're coming off of a steal and you're in transition and you're running 3-on-2 and different stuff like that, you can trust Delano Benton to make good decisions with the basketball. But as far as playing in the half court, it's almost like he's a net minus because he's not a threat as a 3-point shooter and he doesn't put a ton of pressure on the rim. But I think defensively he definitely works. I think one of the reasons why the Trailblazers couldn't afford to keep him outside of just, I guess financially to a certain extent, is partially because of the fact that he's kind of redundant with Matisse Thybulle on that team. And I think Matisse Thybulle is a lot better version of what Delano Banton is as a defender. But other than that, I think that he definitely should be on a roster. Tristan Newton, solid player. I think this has more to do with his ability to score the basketball like at a high rate in the G League. Should probably get some tick somewhere just because of what he brings as a really like influential scorer. He's definitely your microwave score off the bench type. I don't necessarily think he fits any mold further than that, but he's somebody that with the way he's performed, it says 26.7 points, 9.4 assists, 2.7 steals. Realistically, he's going to get a call up just off of the strength that there's a belief he can score the basketball. But beyond that, it's kind of tough. Patrick Baldwin Jr., I thought this dude was going to be the truth coming out of college. I thought Patrick Baldwin Jr. was going to be the truth. And maybe we were all bamboozled by the fact that he went I'm going to play under my dad in college route with Milwaukee. But he's a guy that I think all the intangibles are there. Like, I can see why they have him at 4 because if you just look at it, like, He's a guy that has all the scoring ability in the world as far as his overall makeup. 6'9", ball handling skills, can shoot the three ball a little bit. He's somebody that I feel like can really take you off the dribble. And a lot of like Patrick Baldwin Jr. is a lot of like what the theory of Michael Porter Jr. coming out of high school was, except Michael Porter Jr. was a lot more well-renowned coming out of high school than even Patrick Baldwin Jr. was. And they both were like top 5 recruits in their class at the time. But it's a lot of that kind of vibe, and I don't necessarily know if I don't believe that Patrick Baldwin Jr. has been like hindered by injuries. I think he's been hindered by the inability to fit within a true system, and it doesn't help that one of the first teams that he was drafted to was the Golden State Warriors, because that's just a team that if you got to get in where you fit in. If you don't fit into the Golden State Warriors system, you end up getting annexed. It's a lot of the reason why Dennis Schroeder didn't last. It's why D'Angelo Russell didn't last. It's the reason why Jonathan Kuminga is having so many issues right now. When you're somebody that's not able to assimilate with a system, especially as intricate as a team like the Golden State Warriors, Patrick Baldwin Jr., who's more of an isolation off the dribble scorer, he falls into a category where unless you're as talented as someone like Kevin Durant once upon a time was when he was with the Golden State Warriors, still is obviously, but unless you're that level of talent as an off the dribble scorer, you got to get in where you fit in. And with the Golden State Warriors, he just never was able to really get that, unfortunately. He was never really able to adapt that. Mac McClung, I'm under the impression that this guy is being used as a media ploy. Because I think this dude can hoop. I mean, don't get me wrong, the dunk contest thing is obviously the main appeal. And I found him, mini tangent here. If I'm Mac McClung, I am not doing another dunk contest until I know that I'm officially on an NBA roster. Because, I mean, I'm literally putting money into the NBA's pocket by killing it in the dunk contest and being one of the only players really, truly helping it stay alive with creativity and bringing something different to the table. Yet, it seems like I can't seem to stick in the NBA despite actually being pretty good as a basketball player. Like, he's actually pretty decent. The fact that he's able to score the ball so well in the G League, he shot the three ball relatively well as well. I just feel like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and act like Mac McClung is some, missing piece for a championship team. But you just can't convince me that a guy that can score the basketball as well as he's been able to do, at least at the G League level, can't at least buy some minutes on a regular NBA roster. I just don't believe that that's the case. I think that he's a capable knockdown three-point shooter, and he's somebody that as a backup point guard can give you a lot of juice, give you a lot of energy as a transition player. Like, he's somebody that when you throw the alley-oop in transition and he finishes with some crazy athletic dunk, that's something that can bring not only fire to your team, but then kind of erupt the building in a way that creates this momentum for your team. And that's exactly what a high-level bench player is supposed to bring. It's what I think makes like a player like Obi Toppin, for example, for the Indiana Pacers, speak of the devil, given, he was on the Indiana Pacers for a 10-day contract. But guys like that, there's that element that they bring to the table where even if they're not this 15 to 16 point per game scorer off the bench, the impact that they bring from an energy perspective, it changes the whole mold. Another Indiana Pacers player, TJ McConnell. You mean to tell me that TJ McConnell can be a legitimate backup point guard in today's NBA, but Mac McClung can't? When TJ McConnell's bread and butter is just being an absolute menace in passing lanes on the defensive end, and Mac McClung's is that he can score the heck out of the basketball. Like, yes, as your starting shooting guard, that's an undervalued positional archetype now, right? That's why, for example, Cam Thomas didn't get paid this summer. It's the reason why, although I think Quentin Grimes has a little bit more upside as a defender than someone like Cam Thomas, the leaning on primarily needing to be a primary ball handler scoring type made it where it was hard to want to bring him back on a more long-term contract. That and the Sixers are trying to finagle their money to make it where they have real bread available, or at least a decent amount of bread available for 2027, because outside of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, and Paul George, they do have a little bit of wiggle room by 2027 to maybe make another crack at, bringing in somebody else. That's a big name, but Still, man, I just think that Mac McClung can definitely play. Ben Simmons, this one is so funny to me because I genuinely believe that Ben Simmons just, I don't know why he can't be your small ball center as a ball mover. Like, I think Ben Simmons, this is going to sound really nasty, but I also think that it could really help him. I think you need to put Ben Simmons in a room with somebody who's like very aggressive. And aggressive from a teaching perspective, aggressive from a tough love perspective, is somebody that's going to help him really sit down and reflect on what it takes to be a good basketball player. I think that if you put him on a team like the Miami Heat, or if you put him next to Draymond, or in, let's say, in the same locker room, not necessarily next to, but in the same locker room as a Draymond Green, I think that he could be a really, really interesting player still. I know there were conversations about him potentially landing on the New York Knicks this summer. Thought that was actually kind of interesting because of what he brings as a defender and as a ball mover. That's always going to be kind of helpful for a New York Knicks team that needs guys who can swing so that Jalen Brunson isn't always holding onto the rock so long. And you know, Mike Brown's tried to implement an offensive system to get more guys involved and get more ball movement incorporated into that. Sacramento Kings, I'm glad the Sacramento Kings didn't touch him, because if his career was already in shambles, the Kings would have just been the cherry on top to finish the job. But I think the biggest issue for Ben Simmons, and it actually says it right here, is that he mainly remains unsigned because he wants more than a minimum contract. And it's like, if we're being honest, I'm going to look straight into the camera. If Ben Simmons, who are you to ask for more than a minimum contract right now? Back spasms, constant concerns of where your mental and emotional state is as far as being present both on and off the basketball floor. And you haven't shown real upside to be anywhere back to where you were as a defender. And I'm not saying you have to be an all NBA caliber defender like you were before, but to think that Ben Simmons can't even be 60, 70% of the defender that he was in the past. One, I don't think that's truly the case. I do think there's still the capacity to do that. But who are you to think that you deserve more than a minimum contract right now when you haven't proven that? And we already know you're not a three-point shooter. That's fine. We've already established that you're never going to be a three-point shooter in the league. It's just, maybe you start doing it and you play for the Guangdong Tigers or something like that. You just decide when you go overseas that you're just going to start hooping a totally different way. But as far as the NBA is concerned, we know you're not going to be a floor spacer. But are you an above average passer? Yes. You probably still are a top 20 passer in the NBA right now. Top 15 passer as far as passing IQ and ability to make the read in the NBA right now. And defensively, you still have the intangibles, the physical gift and intangibles attached with somebody that even 70% of what you used to give as an all-NBA caliber defender would probably still be a team's, third best defender? Fourth best defender at worst? That's still a very good upside as a guy who can guard on the perimeter. You can place at your small ball five as a dude who can be like a real engine for you, grab the ball off the rebound and push the ball up the floor. He would fit really interestingly as a small ball five for a team, like the Indiana Pacers. He would fit really well as a small ball five for a team like the Houston Rockets, who already have real floor spacing, or at least, let's say, decent floor spacing around them. Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun shooting the three ball relatively well this year. Reed Shepard's really coming along as a three-point shooter. Jabari Smith, when he's really on, is a good three-point shooter. So you could have him as an interesting small ball five that helps with juicing up their pace. I mentioned Miami already as a team, another team that's killing it in terms of pace of play so far this season. I know Toronto fans might not love this, but I mean, another really interesting place because of the way they thrive on their versatility positionally, because outside of Jakob Poeltl, they don't really have a true center on the roster, which is why they struggle with rim protection so much when Jakob Poeltl is not on the floor. Yeah, Ben Simmons isn't going to give you rim protection, but what he doesn't give you in rim protection, again, the 70% version of him could still give you a lot of roaming ability, right, where he can kind of play that back free safety role, very similar to Draymond Green. I thought that's why Golden State would be an interesting fit too. The tough love aspect, the ability to kind of take on the same exact role. I'm not gonna say just do what Draymond does. Like, I'm gonna simplify it and make it sound like what Draymond does is so easy to replicate, because he is a very unique defender at both his size and the ability that he has. But it gives you a muse that's very similar to, especially with you dealing with things like back injuries and stuff. Ben Simmons can take a lot of what Draymond Green does at his advanced age that doesn't rely a lot on athleticism on the defensive end and use that in his game to be like super duper effective. So Ben Simmons, I think, would actually be a really dope fit for a handful of teams if he would just get over himself. So get over yourself, bro, and you'll play on a really good roster. You might mess around and be on the Miami Heat or the Golden State Warriors on a very, very cheap contract, but one where you have a chance to, really win some games. Last but not least, this one makes the most sense. Malik Beasley, if you take all of the off the court stuff out of the picture, like he would just already be on the Detroit Pistons. Like that would just be set in stone, right? If he wasn't dealing with the off the court problems that he is, if we're being honest, he was easily the best, if not a top 3 shooter in the NBA when you combine both volume and percentage last season. Any team would want that. You could be a bad team and still want Malik Beasley because his floor spacing provides a different element for your team where you can get a good look at other guys on your team, younger guys on your team, and see how they thrive with another floor spacer on the roster. Toronto, great idea for them. Detroit, I think, still would really love to have him on this roster, even with them bringing in Duncan Robinson essentially as the Malik Beasley replacement. I mean, they had Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. last year. Tim Hardaway Jr. is now in the Denver Nuggets. You're able to get Malik Beasley back. You just add him to Duncan Robinson, who's really starting to find his 3-point stroke back again this season. I mean, it's still the same percentage, but it just looks more effective this year. It looks like he's being utilized in a more effective way with the Detroit Pistons than how the last 2 years with Miami have been, where it looked a little bit more shaky, right? Especially when you look at his price tag. But Malik Beasley, I mean, he would automatically be the best shooter on most teams that he would join. You think of, being added to the Milwaukee Bucks right now, going back to Milwaukee, that would be a really good fit for him as somebody who could be an off guard next to like a Ryan Rollins as a 3-point shooter. He would be really interesting. The Minnesota Timberwolves, there's reports that say there's reports about the Minnesota. There's reports out of the Minnesota Timberwolves camp saying they're really looking for point guard help, kind of showing their lack of belief in Robert Dillingham, and also the fact that it seems like the Mike Conley, Uncle Mike Express is kind of finally, taken off and or kind of met his station, I guess you could say. And so Minnesota, granted, is Malik Beasley kind of just a doppelganger of like getting Dante DiVincenzo, who you already have on the roster? Yes, to a certain extent. But what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the idea of just having another floor spacer who you already know plays well next to superstars, has played next to Anthony Edwards in the past before, and a guy who just provides a lot of real gravity that opens up more on the floor for guys, especially teams that really rely on mid-range shooting. So I'm not surprised that Malik Beasley is one here, just given the mere fact that like his floor spacing is so promising that if you could have it on any roster, Utah would love Malik Beasley right now if it was a way to make Lauri Markkanen look even better for his trade value, for example, right? Like any team could use a Malik Beasley with what he brings to the table. But with all that being said, this has been another really interesting Routine Jumper Rants video. Want to keep doing these, so drop ideas for different things that I can talk about, drop links to articles that we can react to together, and drop a name either on this list or that was not listed. It can be a player that would be more considered as a two-way with the G League if you guys want to open up the floodgates a little bit more, because I think that would make I feel like that would make the pool of players a little bit more interesting. Name a player who does not have an official roster spot on an NBA team right now that you think is talented enough and has a translatable enough skill that he deserves and should be on an NBA roster by the NBA trade deadline, like very, very soon, like within the next 2 to 3 months. Because I think there's a handful of guys that are not actively on rosters that definitely I think are gonna get a call up or two, gonna get some burn. But which ones do you think are the most deserving? You can give guys again that are either on this list from Bleacher Report or some guys from the G League that didn't make the list, that you think are just as deserving. But with all that being said, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily NBA content. Remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.